Okay, it is 6:30 in the morning on November 2nd, 2023. I'm starting this recording first thing out of bed because there's some things that I have to say. Like some of you, right? I didn't sleep well, but it's also possible that I'm more sensitive to the solar flares and the geomagnetic storms which come from the CMEs and the solar rain and the solar plasma and the solar particles, so on and so forth. And that's obviously why I've been discussing this for many, many years, in a day and age in which a lot of people have been skeptical about what I've been saying, making the suggestion that we are affected by the solar cycles and they influence cycles of war and peace. Now, even though there's been some resistance to this truth, and it is a truth, I came across an article that I shared in a recent YouTube video from MSN.com talking about the multiple days of magnetic storms, in which it talked about the incoming storms being fairly strong, at least a level 6 on the K index. So when it comes to the rating scale, they rate it in terms of storms like G1, 2, G3, G4 storms, and the K index. So 6 is pretty high. In this article, it talks about the common ways in which people are affected, and it even included the word aggression. I also noticed someone with heart trouble recently and someone on Facebook saying that they had a heart attack. And so this does influence cardiac events. Also, an elderly man by the name of Tom Horn of Skywatch TV passed away recently, and his cardiac event could have been connected to a recent uptick in solar activity. And so when we talk about the toxicity of the conspiracy movement, their lack of awareness regarding the influence of the solar flares is a part of that. And there's many people that dabble in planet worship, astrology, things of that nature. Not to put all astrologers in the same box, but many mainstream astrologers do not specifically talk about the influence of the sun, so they may not be aware of it, as their focus is on the influence of Saturn, or the influence of Jupiter, or the influence of Neptune, or the influence of Mars, or the influence of Venus. Not to take away from some of the relevancy of some of that, but they do not directly talk about the solar influence. And so I believe that the sun and the moon were created by God, that they are of God, and being aware of these things and how we're being influenced by them is not the same thing as worshiping those things. In this MSN article, it also talks about ways of mediating the effects of the solar flares, such as getting rest and or getting exercise, because you may feel an influx of energy and you may really need to do some exercise. Avoiding unhealthy foods and avoiding alcohol. And the thing is, and I've talked about this for many, many years. When there is an influx of solar flare energy into the earth and into our bodies, and it can also be coming from the top down into our head, or our crown chakra, if you will. It can also be affecting the earth and the earth's core and coming back up to us through the feet. So there's a number of different ways in which we are affected by these geomagnetic storms. And so a lot of people, they will have certain predispositions or urges to do certain things, like to do certain drugs or to drink a lot of alcohol. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental tone, I'm saying this in an objective tone. To smoke cigarettes, because what they're doing is they're trying to come down from the solar high. And so while they may be in denial of the solar high out of ego, right? There's this unfortunate attitude of mankind. I'm not affected by the moon cycles. I'm not affected by the solar flares, while they're getting upset, while they're having insomnia, while their dreams are being invaded by people that they talk to online. Which is why, folks, it's wise for me to take time off the internet. I'm not doing that right now, right? But it is wise to do that for those of us that are sensitive. Others, they will be consumed with sexual feelings or lustful feelings. Again, not to sound judgmental in the context of this discussion, because the sun is life and the sun is amplifying the fertility rates in the individuals and in the collective. It is also believed by the Native Americans that the aurora borealis effect that we see is in reality new souls waiting to be born on planet Earth. Okay, and so we have an increase in souls coming into the Earth during solar maximum periods. And I also said years ago that we also see an increase in violence on the planet through the act of wars, through the increased aggression, through the increased testosterone. And so the human body goes through changes, brainwave changes, hormonal changes, and other changes as well. One of the terms that is used to describe this effect that the sun has on botanical life and physical life is chronobiology. I remember, by the way, when I used to briefly trade emails with David Icke, once I talked about the solar flares and suggested that maybe he look into that and add it into his books, maybe it was out of ego, he stopped talking to me. And at least I was able to talk to George Norrie in Coast to Coast in 2019. But the audience of Coast to Coast didn't bother to contact me or subscribe to my channel, at least not any that I could tell, that I could see, that I could notice. And so I put together a blog back in 2019 on how to mediate the effects of the solar cycles. I'm going to see if I can easily find that right now. Looks like I have that. And so these are things that people don't normally think about. And there is a Facebook group by the name of Solar Maximum. And in that group, they are primarily speaking about the solar flares from a basic level, surface level perspective, where they're talking about the sun and unfortunately still from a grand solar minimum perspective. And so other perspectives on the sun, for example, are not necessarily being heard, read, or seen. And so what I'm going to do is share this recording and encourage people in that group to take a closer look at my work and a closer look at their feelings as we experience this incoming geomagnetic storm, of which we have been feeling for a number of days. And again, look at world events. As we come out of the October 13th, 14th new moon eclipse, and we saw an increase in shootings. We saw the attacks on Gaza, and that actually occurred before the actual new moon eclipse, because of course there's going to be the effect of the eclipses felt in the weeks, the months, even some say years before the day of the eclipse. And there's a reason why I didn't go outside to look at the eclipse, because I knew inside my body, internally, within my own DNA, that there is something malevolent about these eclipses, but it also can be a spiritual time. But that doesn't mean that we should be going outside and doing dances under the eclipse. I think that there are people that I've known that have done that have shown themselves to be not really in tune with their higher selves and not really in genuine appreciation of what I have just been discussing about the solar cycles. And they've shown themselves, one particular individual, to have a strong inclination and favoritism for people that engage in fake channeled messages, that are in the New Age movement, that are absolutely engaged in far-right, hateful disinformation, right? So beware of a lot of people in the New Age movement today. And so we've seen an increase in talks of war, threats from Russia, threats from China, Chinese fighter jets, 43 of them, buzzing Taiwan, threats from Iran towards the U.S. if the U.S. and or Israel does not stop their engagement, their involvement in what is taking place in Gaza. And there are stories of refugee camps being demolished and bombed. And there is intense, I'm going to say this briefly. There is intense hatred of the Jews at this time, and many possessed Muslims at this time, storming airports in Russia and other places, saying Allah Akbar, and looking for Jews. And I'm here as someone that has defended immigrants, that has defended the good Muslims, even though these Muslims, to the best of my knowledge, do not support me, do not like me. So I do think that there is a demonic association with many world religions, and including many Christians that I've met, many churches. So I'm not just pointing the finger at the New Agers or the Muslims or the Christians. I really have little to no engagement with Jews, to be honest with you. I've never lived anywhere where they are a dominant demographic. However, in Portland, there were a lot of Jews, but not so much religious Jews, maybe ethnic Jews. My point is this: even though you have people that claim to want to follow the ascended masters or the higher spirits or God, many people are still in channel mode or worship mode. They are not truly seeking to serve God or be an asset to the true creator. And they're not acting with a higher level of God-given intuition or intelligence. They are followers. And because they are followers of people on social media, because they don't really seek to have a true connection with God, they are easily led into hateful actions. And so when these solar cycles ramp up, the powers that be know the true nature of human consciousness and how they can be led into darkness, because ultimately the powers that be are not human. And so they sit in their rooms, if you will, with their computer screens, and they can see in real time human beings in full color. Just think Predator, the movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger from the 1980s, in which he can see the heat signature from Arnold Schwarzenegger, the human that he is stalking. And then, of course, when Arnold starts to fight back, strategically, he covers up his body with mud, and so his energy field could not be so easily detected, his heat signature. We also have our own heat signature, as you know, that can be detected by drones overhead. There's also night vision goggles. So I'm suggesting to you, even though I've never been in one of these rooms, I've never been on an alien ship to the best of my knowledge, but using my God-given intelligence and intuition in a yin-yang balance, I know in my heart that there are these forces of evil that do know that how we are affected by these solar cycles, and even some bloodlines over others. So while there's a war on mixed race humans, especially some mixed race humans over others, and people are brainwashed, even my father's family, right? Even people from Muslim countries, they are brainwashed too. It's not just people in the West that are brainwashed to look down on mixed race humans. It's also people from Muslim dominant countries as well, from East India, right? There's a lot of racist East Indians that I have met in my life that have turned me down for work in Colorado, that were managers of hotels. I haven't told you this story yet, right? And so when you hear me push back against the racism towards mixed race humans, I am discussing it coming from the Black community, East Indians, Arabs, Afghans, Muslim communities, as well as whites and Latinos. And so in my understanding, I have an advanced understanding of the sun, that is not matched by other humans. On my white side of the family, with the Austrian bloodline and the Welsh bloodline and the English bloodline and Germanic and all that, they don't talk about the solar cycles. And my mother, who thought she was tapped into New Age channels for years, would never say, "Good job, son. You really tapped into something powerful here." Her response was, "Yeah, the sun is an interesting thing. We really don't know what's going on." That's it. That's all she can say. After 20, 30, 40 years in the New Age movement, that's all this white mother could say to her mixed race son. As for my father, he will not respond to a single blog that I've written about the solar cycle, but will post on his own page that he feels that some sort of omen, that there's some sort of an omen that he can detect or feel from these articles that he's reading about the changes in the Earth's core. As they then went on to predict earthquakes in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, and other places in the Middle East as a result of these changes in the Earth's core having an effect on certain regions of the Earth in which the fault lines are in a very, very volatile state. Now, I took a look at a certain individual whose content I was never attracted to, and his name is Kevin Barrett. And I believe that his content is false flag news. And this is my concern about Kevin Barrett, right? This is not slander. This is not an attack. I did interview him, or tried to interview him, in 2006, and I believe that I came under electronic targeted harassment when I attempted to engage in that interview. And I was very, very upset at the time, and I remember yelling back in the day. During those times, I was going from roommate situation to roommate situation, doing, quote, Patriot Radio, and all those websites that I used to produce shows for have eliminated and removed all of my content. More on that in a few minutes. So I never got to have a deep discussion with Kevin Barrett. When we talked, he said, "Alex, it's an honor, a great honor to be with you." I didn't really feel that he meant that in a genuine sense. But he probably wasn't impressed by my interviewing skills because we were being messed with electronically. There was interference that I was experiencing on my computer. So like I said, I was upset and doing some yelling, maybe dropping some curse words. I'm a little bit more disciplined. I'm a lot more disciplined now, and I'm not moving from roommate situation to roommate situation. So I'm in a more stable place in my life. But back then, I would interview anybody that was involved in conspiracy theory, whereas now I see that a lot of them are on the dark side. Even if they criticize Trump, it doesn't mean that they are necessarily of the light, right? There's many people on the left that criticize Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of Trump. I see him as part of the New World Order. Same thing with Vladimir Putin. But just because someone criticizes white supremacy and criticizes Donald Trump does not mean that they are of the light, does not mean that they don't have their own supremacy and their own conspiracy theories and their own hatred, whether it be black supremacy, white supremacy, or left-wing supremacy, right? A lot of them have really dark spirits and attitudes on the left. So here's what I have to say. I'm looking at Kevin Barrett's analysis of Israel, and I get concerned about the language that I'm hearing. I get concerned about this language saying that we should support Hamas, paraphrasing the words of Kevin Barrett. I get concerned at the language that I hear from Kevin Barrett saying that Israel should be attacked. And he speaks in a jolly, I'm a friendly grandfather type of a way. He's not cursing when he speaks. He's not shouting. He sounds like a nice guy. But I don't see Kevin Barrett standing up for the Afghanis. And I did hear Kevin Barrett say that the Taliban were the true Muslims. No, the Taliban are not the true Muslims. The Taliban should have had their ass kicked if the U.S. was going to go in. I've never said this before, right? If they were going to go in, I've said it lightly, and they were in for many years, they had the ability to eradicate the Taliban, right? And they didn't even have to use drones. They used the drones over there to torture innocent men, women, and children, and to get us accustomed to the robot attacks. Okay, that's the truth. It's callous and it's torture. It wasn't right what they did at Abu Ghraib. It wasn't did when they torture people into false confessions. And it's cowardly and it's sick and it's demonic to murder innocent men, women, and children with machines of death overhead. And I will die standing on my feet, speaking as a man for the millions of dead, rather than be on my knees, die silent as a coward. So who is Kevin Barrett to say that the Taliban are the true Muslims when they kill innocent men, women, and children in Afghanistan that don't think just like them? You know, before the Taliban, people in Afghanistan were consuming marijuana. In some areas not controlled by the Taliban, they probably still are. There's a lot of strains of good marijuana, and I'm not consuming at the time because I can't afford it. But if I could afford it and I had a never-ending supply, I would be. But for spiritual reasons, by the way, in my recent purge and not consuming adult content and not consuming violent movies and not listening to death metal, not that I ever liked any of that, not consuming gangster rap, not that I ever liked any of that either, right? But I'm on a spiritual path now, folks, that's deeper than my previous attempts. And so stick with me, folks, because you need to hear this before you hear about how to mediate the effects of the solar flares, because I'm telling you, when we have the increase in solar flares, we have the increase in wars, and thus we have the people responding to those wars, responding to those attacks on innocent civilians, and they may say themselves, well, we need to fight them back. We need to shoot them back. We need to do this back. Just like you see those Muslims storming the airport looking for Jews, saying Allah Akbar. Does Kevin Barrett say that they are doing the right thing? So Kevin Barrett is wrong to say that the Taliban are legitimate Muslims. And Andrew Tate is wrong to say that ISIS and other groups are the true Muslims, while he says he's now a Muslim, and he goes on Tucker Carlson, and nobody on the right that I can tell who has a loud voice or megaphone in the alternative media has said a damn thing. Has Alex Jones said anything? Has Glenn Beck said anything? Did Tucker Carlson push back against him after Tucker Carlson demonized Muslims for a long, long time? Demonized the supposed claiming that there's a supposed white genocide. Well, Andrew Tate is half black, half white. Aren't you going to consider Andrew Tate to be a part of white genocide? Because there's plenty of Nazis out there that acted like I was white genocide for standing up for my own value, throwing their white genocide mythos in my face like I should be ashamed of being born. And on the topic of racists don't get better, let me explain this to you. Just because someone is a white supremacist and just because someone is racist does not mean that they don't view certain ethnic minorities as more intelligent than them. So just because they're racist, it does not mean that they think that someone is inferior to them. It actually means, like what happened to me, that they believe that that person should be harmed, slandered, and oppressed. They may feel that they have to do that because they know that person is a threat to their white world order. So I do not believe that there is white genocide, but I do believe that there is anti-white racism and anti-white bigotry, and that there is weaponized migration from Muslim countries into the Western world, not to help the Western world and not to help those Muslims, but to create a chaotic situation. So I'm not open borders, but I'm not against all refugees. If I was involved in the immigration process, if I was the one that was the director, I would be bringing people in a slightly different way, and I would be bringing them into areas in America where they were more welcome, and I would make sure that there is that the more honorable Muslims and immigrants that earned the right to come over, that are good folks, get a chance to come over, and I would not import in people that are active criminals who believe in barbaric things about the Western world. And there's ways in which you can screen individuals. And so the way in which they're doing it now is they're just grabbing people in mass and they're dumping them in areas. And it's really harming the names and reputations of good immigrants that came here for years and years and years, that immigrated legally. And, you know, my father was able to benefit from legal immigration in the late 60s and 70s. And so did many members of his family. And they were from the higher education class. My grandfather, his father, was involved in the police, military, and higher education, although they won't tell me the full story about his life. But they were involved in higher education, and so when they came over, they continued their education. My father finished high school in Chicago, Illinois, in I think 1971 or 1972. I've got a picture of them. And these people did not come over wearing long beards. These people came over with short haircuts and shaved faces, not looking ethnic at all. I can show you plenty of relatives, by the way, that are totally white. Not that that means anything, right? But that are totally white. I'm the brown one, ironically. And I'm from America, although I'm not super brown, but I have East Indian ancestry. And there's plenty of relatives of my father that came over that can easily blend into a sea of tall white men walking down the street in New York City, in Portland, Oregon. And so as a result of their ability to blend into a white society, and the fact that they had higher education, and the fact that they got master's degrees, and the fact that they weren't radicalized, and they loved Americans, they loved American food, and they loved the hippies, and they loved the white women, and they loved the counterculture, and they loved the flower children, they loved the Bob Dylan, and we're talking about Timmy Ansary himself as well. That was a big part of the hippie days in old Portland. These were immigrants back in the day that had a very different immigrant experience in which 9/11 had not happened. And these older immigrants do not have compassion for their distant relative, Alex Ansary, who grew up in the post 9/11 world. These, even though I said they were of a higher caliber immigrant class, because they were given so much, and my father, just so you know, was helped in so many ways by my mother's family. My grandfather on my mother's side helped my father's family, some of them, immigrate to the US when Russia invaded Afghanistan. Okay, and so I was told these stories as a child, but my father's family does not show respect to me for what my grandfather did to help some of their relatives, right? They're selfish, self-serving. So just because we're taught to look down on some of these other immigrants that don't have education, that in some cases came from war-torn countries, that may not have manners, that may have attitude problems, I'm here to say that the supposed good immigrants that got into higher education that came over illegally, i.e. my father's family in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, they are a very selfish, self-centered group of individuals that don't seem to take accountability for the fact that they were given so much when they came here. White people opened up their homes to these people and let them in and saw the beauty of their culture. This is before, of course, the Taliban took over their country with the help of Pakistan, which is connected to the CIA. And so everything that's happening with the downfall of Afghanistan is deliberate, was deliberate. And so nobody is really looking for the truth about September 11th, 2001, unless they want the truth about Afghanistan. And so, as I said, you can look at Zoe Ansary, the TikTok model with 11 million likes, and all these people talking to Zoe Ansary, and all these people following Tamim Ansary, all these white people following Zoe Ansary and Tamim Ansary, and reading the books of Nina Ansary of Iran. But if they were pushing back against the genocide in Afghanistan, if they were exposing the one world government, if they were exposing the lies about 9/11, if they had ever interviewed Alex Jones, David Icke, Jim Mars, and other big hitters in the conspiracy movement, they would not be so liked and well received. It's because I embarked on the so-called truth movement that not only did I alienate most white people, especially people on the left that think that I'm a right-wing conspiracy theorist, my father's family won't talk to me, and after years of giving my life and sacrificing my life to the American conspiracy movement, the truth movement will have nothing to do with me because of my ethnic nature. It doesn't matter if I'm Christian, and I'm telling you the truth. I am a Gnostic Christian because I call out the archons. But at present, I read Bible texts, I read Psalms, I read the story of Jesus in the wilderness, and I identify with that. And I see many people in the alternative media being tempted by Jesus. Tempted by Satan. They claim, some of them, to follow Jesus. But in reality, many of them see Adolf Hitler as their Lord and Savior. Some of them think that they can follow the teachings of Adolf Hitler and the Thule Society, the dark arts, and still be a Christian. They are lying to their flock. They are lying to their YouTube following, some of which may be self-described as Christians. But no one is a true Christian or a true follower of Christ if they are following neo-Nazi ideology. And there's many now following neo-Nazi ideology that are welcome to black people. Welcome black people into the right wing. yet they still have neo-Nazi ideology towards certain people of color, as they believe in their minds that certain countries should be bombed back to the Stone Age, and they have no remorse. Going back to Mr. Barrett and finishing that story, is he standing up against the genocide of the people of Afghanistan and Iraq? Why would he say that the Taliban are the true Muslims? Why does Kevin Barrett have so many white listeners? If they're so against Muslims and radical Muslims, why wouldn't Kevin Barrett have so many followers, so many paid subscribers? Listen, you need to stop getting offended, and you need to, I command in the name of Jesus that you ascend in your consciousness right now, not a New Age ascension, not a 5D ascension, that you wake up right now and you get over your ethnocentric nature if you covet it in your heart. Folks, it's because he's white. And if Kevin Barrett was Islamic in an Afghani sense, or Iraqi or Yemen, you would never let Kevin Barrett get away with saying that the Taliban are the true Muslims. You would never be his subscriber. You would never be his fan. And so there are some deranged whites out there, even though there's a lot of pushback against what they say is white genocide. There's also a lot of whites that hate white people, which is just psychotic also, that will sit there and stand with the radical aspects of Black Lives Matter and attack white people while they're white, not seeing their own hypocrisy. And so you will have people that are white that are listening to Kevin Barrett, and he will say that these radical groups are the true Muslims, and he will call for attacks on Israel. So let me tell you what else I saw. There was a guy by the name of Andrew, and I'm not going to mention his last name, and he is the owner of a prominent white supremacy website by the name of the Daily Stormer, which, by the way, was co-founded by a man by the name of Lee, right? And so those of you that listen to me on Oracle Broadcasting may remember that it was founded by Doug Owen and a man named Lee, and that they later deleted all my archives, the only man of ethnic heritage at Oracle Broadcasting. There's no record of an Alex Ansary at Oracle Broadcasting. And why don't you send an email over to blacklistednews.com right now? Do it. Tell Doug Owen it was wrong to delete Alex Ansary's podcasts from Oracle Broadcasting after I put all that time and effort into it. When I brought up with Doug, he said, all you did is cry on the radio and attack your audience. And that's not true. I had some rough days, and I was literally hosting that out of a small bedroom. And everywhere that I did that show, my roommates resented me for having a radio show and having a radio voice. So instead of being in my element in an actual radio studio like Clyde Lewis is in Portland, Oregon, where he spreads fake right-wing conspiracy trash news out of Portland, Oregon, using the alien gray as his emblem, which is bad luck, promoting various fake conspiracy theories that I don't need to repeat, right? Folks, I think all the elections are rigged. Every single one of them. Even the one that brought Trump into power. So you're not going to see me hop up and down like a maniac when 2020 comes around, because both sides are corrupt. No one wins when it's World War III, and no one wins when it's the 2020 election, and no one wins when it's the 2024 election, and no one wins or is going to win in the 2028 election. It's all rigged. It's all corrupt. The people on the controlled left and the people on the controlled right at January 6th are under mind control. And so, when it comes to Oracle Broadcasting, that deleted all my content along with American Freedom Radio, along with my 2025 discussion with Joel Skousen on disclose.tv, a fake German trash website that many people trust, as if you can trust the so-called Disclosure Project. Many other websites as well. Lee went on to found the Daily Stormer with this Andrew character. And Andrew was replatformed by Elon Musk, who has ties to China. And as I've been saying to you for months, there is a connection between the far right, the New Age movement, and China. There is a unification, there is a unity amongst East Indians, the Chinese, Facebook, big tech, Europe, genocidal maniacs in NATO, in Australia, in the UK, and out of the US that murdered and slaughtered millions of innocent men, women, and children in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in some cases Yemen, as the Saudis have been bombing back the resistance fighters using US weapons. sold by the Trump administration, sold by the Obama administration, and sold, I believe, even by the Biden administration. Although initially the Biden administration canceled some of the weapons deals that the Trump administration pushed forward. The Trump administration also called the resistance fighters terrorists before Pompeo left office. How many of you that think that you're savvy with things are aware of these things? So I do hope that you appreciate my memory and my analysis, because I will tell you what few men will about the corruption in our day and age. And so Elon Musk, even though he's tied to China, he has been platforming all of these white supremacists while he says in the BBC report or interview, show me evidence. And the BBC reporter can't show him evidence. As far as I'm concerned, that interview was rigged, or that interview was incompetent, because the evidence is off the charts. I won't use Twitter for a reason. It may have gotten better in recent months, but it was bad, 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 bad in January, February, March, April. And, you know, the more I criticized China, the more I posted about China making threats to America, the more technical difficulties that I would have on Twitter, until I connected the dots for myself and felt intuitively to get off Twitter, because it is being manipulated by China, as they are also manipulating the search results on YouTube. And so the people that harmed my reputation, the people that came against me, might as well be working on behalf of China and Russia. And maybe they're under electronic mind control. Maybe they're suffering from the voices in the head phenomena, falsely thinking that it's their own government, without realizing that there's a demonic component behind it that is hell-bent on bringing us World War III, because they may really be bringing us a depopulation agenda, right? You don't need to be obsessed with the Gregorian, with the monument, the Georgia Guidestones, right? There's way too much conspiracy obsession with not only the Georgia Guidestones, but CBDCs. I'm not saying that CBDCs are not a major issue, but folks, we're already in somewhat of a cashless society. The big issue that we should be concerned with is hardcore racism to all the people of the earth, and Megadeth. No, not the band Megadeth, although some of their songs, I'm a little concerned about the sanity of Dave Mustaine, but, you know, yeah, a little bit of humor there. But love a lot of their old stuff. But it does have a satanic overtone too, if you keep listening without taking breaks, and then listening to some Sade, listening to some positive love songs of the 70s and 80s. You got to mix that stuff up. They need to be more concerned, as far as I'm concerned, the conspiracy movement, with the mega death, the mega destruction of foreign lands. They should be concerned about karma. And so I literally have seen this entire conspiracy movement taken over by Satan. And I saw from the Sufi channel, who I've referenced many times, he talked about the portals opening up. He talks about the manipulation of Satan, of people's sensations. And he even made a suggestion that the vast majority of the human species might actually be non-human, might actually be jinn in human form. And what I've been speculating is that the vast majority of the people that we come across might actually be demon souls. And this would explain why, despite my content is available, it hardly has any viewers, because I am not serving Satan in any way. And those that are serving Satan, they're being promoted by the algorithm, and they have fat paychecks, they have children, they have wives, they have multiple wives in some cases, or girlfriends. They have millions of listeners, and you can't find any criticism online of people like James Gilliland, of Laura Eisenhower, of Clyde Lewis. I challenge you, look online. Yet other innocent people that have done their best to try to help you and warn about these possible incoming attacks from Russia and China, right? People like that, in many cases, are attacked. People bear false witness. People engage in gossip. And so if there were truly godly people drawn to my work in large numbers, there would be women sending me emails, not old girlfriends from the past, trying to rekindle up some feeling or make me feel bad about myself because of how things went down between us. They would say, thank you, Alex, for speaking up against the human trafficking epidemic and what could be coming if our country's invaded. If there were people with love in their hearts, people that engage in hateful actions towards me that were overtaken by the spirit of racism, they would contact me and say, Alex, even though we hated you in the past, you've shown us that you're intelligent and that you care about us and you care about our future despite what our society has done to your father's home country. Way to go for warning about China and Russia and being brave enough, one of the bravest in the truth movement, to tell the truth about Russia's involvement in the so-called truth movement. But because racists don't get better, they get worse, they won't say anything. Nor will I get emails from people requesting my secondary Substack, making a vow before me in the name of Jesus Christ that they do not have hate in their heart towards any group, and they know that that is a sin against God. So there's going to be many self-described Christians that have been around my work over the years, but many of them are not going to be drawn to the new Alex Ansary, and that includes a lot of black folks that are going to be fine listening to prepper channels that are open about their white supremacy, but they're going to be open to black people. They're not going to engage in racism towards black people. But when they engage in racism and bearing false witness and saying that these groups are going to attack America and that these groups did 9/11, even though their own movement, conspiracy movement, has told the truth about 9/11, or it used to back in the day, now it's okay for blacks and whites to be on the same side, hating the same people. And so this guy, Andrew, was on a webpage, and I don't know whether that webpage was owned by Kevin Barrett, right, or somebody else. Kevin Barrett may own multiple websites. He also has a Substack. And when I saw that he was praising Hamas, I believe that I unsubscribed to his Substack, and if I'm still subscribed, then I'm going to have to go back and unsub. And by the way, there's times in which I unsubbed to Alex Stein, the content creator who hates Muslims now, who works for Glenn Beck, when he used to say that all Muslims were not bad before he worked for Glenn Beck, and he used to talk about 9/11, and now he's throwing hot dogs at a Muslim that he was allegedly going to get involved in some celebrity boxing event for. You see how quickly these people will turn to the dark side if you put some money in front of them? So they claim to believe in Jesus, they claim to believe in God, and in reality, Adolf Hitler is their God, and if that's not their God, money is their God. You cannot serve two masters. I repeat, you cannot serve two masters. When I tried to unsubscribe from Alex Stein 1 month ago, I had to unsub from him 4 different times. I unsubbed and then I was resubbed. I unsubbed and then I was resubbed. So not only will YouTube unsub 1,000 people from my own channel and remove all my comments, and on Facebook will remove 200 likes from my Outside the Box TV with Alex Ansary page, right? It will artificially increase the amount of subscribers or followers to other websites. There was one individual, I mentioned him a few times, that was berating me for years, who had his own channel, who was promoting the white genocide mythos, blaming me as if I did something to him by just being ethnic and asserting my value. That offended him, and he was there to tell me and put me in my place. And so as soon as he started to berate me, as soon as he started to do what he was doing to me to affect me energetically, his viewership, even though he had about the same amount of subs, minus a few thousand, so I had about 16,000, he had about 14,000, upwards of 15,000, his view counts went up to 10,000 viewers per video, 50,000 viewers per video, in some cases 100,000 viewers per video, where I had an average of 300. And these people are acting like they're being held back. These people are saying that they, as white people, are being victimized by people around the world, non-white people, and yet their algorithms are delivering to them massive, massive followings. So either they don't have the intelligence to see their own hypocrisy, or they know that they're being hypocritical and they don't care. They're still going to bear false witness. They're still going to engage in propaganda. So on this website, in which Kevin Barrett has a video from Rumble, in which he's calling for attacks on Israel, and I just stopped playing it. And he's talking to a white woman. He's like, yep, 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 yep. It's like that. It's like those characters from Sesame Street. Yep, 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 yep. I agree with everything you have to say. Yes, Yes, white Muslim man. Yes, the Taliban is the true Muslims. Oh, yes, Andrew Tate. ISIS are the true Muslims. Yep, you get a black pass. Yep, you get a white pass. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, 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 yep. And if you're learning something from this podcast, right, leave a comment down below. Do not listen to these podcasts and not engage. Engage with the content. Copy and paste the URL. Go to a Facebook where you know the people there are going to be receptive to this truth. Send it to your mother. Send it to your father. Put it in an email list. There's a man of black heritage in Africa, in Portland, Oregon. And I sent him a recent YouTube video. And because I talk about the dark side of pornography, and I talk about the eclipse, and I talk about violence erupting before the events in Gaza, even though he was happy to hear from me, he stopped talking to me right away. And then I sent him up a follow-up video where I talked even more about some of these things. I talked about anti-Themism. He doesn't reply. And so it's amazing that people like the old Alex Ansary, who let people walk on him, but now that I'm exposing all the racism and a lot of dark aspects of our society, it's too hot and spicy. It's too in your face for a lot of these low voltage souls that don't have the gusto to expose the darkness of these realms, right? And that's pathetic. They should be ashamed of themselves, but it is what it is. You can't reach certain people. So Kevin Barrett, he has this video from Rumble hosted, and he's got these other articles on the side. And Andrew of the Daily Stormer is basically saying that China is going to bring world peace. That China is standing in the face of the U.S. Yes, the U.S. is moving in an aggressive nature towards China, but China's doing aggressive things themselves, and China's doing horrible things to the Muslims in their country, and it's not a good sign for them to be assisting the illegitimate government known as the Taliban, because of what the Taliban is doing to other Muslims. And so is China planning to do something nefarious to the people of Afghanistan? Is China planning to harvest the organs of the Afghani people down the line with the help or even without the help of the Taliban? But the Taliban are not true followers of God. They are possessed by the devil. Going back to my statement, the U.S. had every ability, even though the Afghanis are tough fighters, still, if they really wanted to eradicate the Taliban, they could have done so. However, the Taliban was always funded from the back door from Pakistan and other governments, including Saudi Arabia, maybe even other governments like Iran or Turkey. But because these wars, not just World War III, are staged, managed, in which the winner is already predetermined, and the U.S. was never designed or designated or structured or calibrated to win those wars. It was just there for us to fund those wars, to drive us into debt, to make the men in uniform look evil and barbaric by sending them into immoral situations in which they killed millions of people collectively, and they don't even count all the bodies of the Afghanis. The modern day veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq is not the same veteran that fought the Nazis in World War II, even though that was staged and that whole conflict was fabricated. There's a big, big difference between the Vietnam vets, the World War II vets, the vets in the Korea War, and the vets that went into Iraq and Afghanistan. And I would even say that the vets that went into Desert Storm were manipulated as well. You would think that they would have woke up, and some of them did because they were poisoned by their own government. They ended up with certain conditions because of the bombs and poisons that were released. You would think that they would also be concerned about what those poisons have done to innocent Iraqis over there, instead of just be concerned for their own skin in a selfish, self-centered mentality. Andrew from the Daily Stormer said that for every serviceman that is killed in Afghanistan, 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 Afghanis should die, displaying that in his mentality and worldview, right, the Afghan life is worth 1/10,000th of a Caucasian life. And here I just told you, there's plenty of Afghanis that have immigrated to the U.S., that have decent jobs, that have big fat salaries, that have lined their pockets involved in refugee services, working for the government, translation services. They've done so much for the US military, so much for higher education, so much for the US system, and nobody treats them as a subhuman. But if you try to involve yourself in the anti-New World Order movement, that they would prefer be totally full of white people only with a few black tokens, and Nick Fuente, a light-skinned Mexican, if you want to operate outside the box, hence outside the box, if you want to operate outside the racial norms that are accepted in their satanic movement, you will be attacked. You will not have friends. You will not have quality girlfriends that love you for who you are as a soul, not just for your body in a temporary fling. Bang, bang, thank you, ma'am. Bam, bang, thank you, sir. And then hate you afterwards for doing it with you. I mean, just pure evil satanic bullshit. Maybe most of the world's human bodies are really full of demon, fallen angel, jinn, archon souls. And maybe that's the truth why I'm living in poverty. I've been doing these broadcasts for a while, folks. And if you can't afford to donate, that's fine. But understand, I'm gonna keep encouraging that people do that, and I'm gonna keep reminding them that there's only been 3 contributions in the last 30 days, each about $20 to $25, and that's fine. That's a nice start. I would like to see that continue as the months go on. I would like to see you put comments on my YouTube channel, right? Don't just listen to my videos. Put comments on the videos. Just leave a 1-sentence, good job, keep it up. Add comments, because if you don't comment on my YouTube channel, you're not helping my YouTube channel grow. It's required for you to leave comments on the YouTube channel, on the Substack blog, to heart the blogs. It's not that I'm, oh my God, you hearted me. I think you love me now. Now we're going to go get married and have babies. No, that's not what I think if you heart my blogs. When you heart my blogs, you're saying, I recognize that you created something of value. I don't hate you. I think you should keep it up. Here's a heart. So every time you listen to the content, you need to like the video. You need to leave comments. You need to leave a heart if it's on Substack. And you need to share it in either an email newsletter, or in a Facebook group, or in another group, in another place on social media. But do not share it with flat earth folks. You do not have my permission. Do not share it with people that say that they're TIs. Do not share my information with people that are Trump supporters. Do not share my information with Black Lives Matter. Do not share my information with people that think that the sun is dying. And do not share my information with open racists. And do not share my information with radical extremists in Islam. Okay, because they're not going to like me either. And if I was to go to those countries, I would be killed instantly on spot for not only not being of their religion, but being of mixed race heritage. The same thing would happen to me in India. One person said to me years ago, a woman, by the way, who claimed she was female, who claimed to be in Poland, who at one point was inviting me over there as if you should ever go overseas with a woman that doesn't even like you or get you well. She says, well, if you think you're facing isolation here, why don't you go to India? As if, right, Indians would be open to a man like me with my last name. There are some Indians with the last name Ansary, but ultimately it's the rest of my ethnicity, the 1/4, right, from my father's country, that they would take a bias against. And if you haven't seen the violent attacks on Muslims in India, in which they're beating a young boy with sticks within inches of his life for daring to talk to a Hindu girl, you can find that video on Twitter. And so I'm going to conclude this recording at 1 hour, right? And when I come back, we will go over the blog that I wrote in 2019 on the solar flares, how to mediate the effect of the solar flares. Let this be somewhat of a appetite for you to get motivated to listen to hour 2. Okay, so I'm going to say a few more things before we hit 1 hour. Like I said, because of the, bringing it home now, because of the increase in solar flares, because of the October 13th eclipse, And because of the October 30th partial eclipse, which for some of us is a very strong, strong feeling, even though it's a partial eclipse, it's going to affect some of us in a big, big way. And there are demonic attacks that come upon these people. And so now, having told you about Kevin Barrett and his call for attacks on Israel, and how he's working with, on websites, his content's being shared with Daily Stormer content, which Lee R. of Oracle Broadcasting went on to help adopt or create after they dumped my files at oraclebroadcasting.com but left everybody else up. And Doug Owen's website is blacklistennews.com. Tell Doug you miss Alex Ansary's content and that it should never have been taken down. Okay? But these folks are not my friends. And Doug and I used to talk for hours and hours and hours and hours until one day he just thought that I was no good. It's okay in our society for white people and black people to talk about their plight and feeling judged. But if I ever do that, I'm creating like a grave sin in their eyes, as if they are some sort of a god looking down on me, some sort of a peasant partial human, or as Jeff Rentz would say, subhuman, which is another piece of shit. He's going to stand against the Israelis and stand up for the Palestinians, rightfully so, but he is going to call every other migrant group subhumans. So I don't give a shit how many protests there are in defense of Palestine. Where were they when Afghanistan was being bombed back to the Stone Age? Nowhere. So I'm telling you that there's an agenda behind these people standing behind Palestine and standing against Israel and wanting the Jews to die. And I'm telling you, what Israel has done to the Palestinian people is inexcusable. But you need to understand what I'm saying. It's hypocritical. People care about one group of Arabic people or Muslims, but they hate other Muslims. But they're okay with a white radical Muslim who's pro-Taliban and a half-black, half-white Andrew Tate Muslim who's pro-ISIS. It is bullshit for Trump to not call them out. And yet Andrew Tate is there promoting Putin and promoting Trump. So you can't be Muslim if you're pro-Trump. You can't be black or white and be Muslim. What you can't be is of a certain ethnic background and be Muslim and or be against the right wing. But I don't even see any Muslims that are for the right wing. When Trump came on the stage, they staged these photo ops that had people in shirts say blacks for Trump, although there are blacks for Trump, but those people were positioned there to increase the African-American vote. But they also had one individual who had the Muslims for Trump thing. I don't know if his webpage still exists. Talk about a phony. But there was never a significant Muslims for Trump movement. However, there are stupid immigrants in the past, such as my father, that were pro-George W. Bush and pro-intervention in Afghanistan, which led to the deaths of millions of lives in Iraq and Afghanistan, and hundreds more lives lost in Afghanistan than they are admitting. What they did admit is that the Pentagon is not counting all the bodies. What does that tell you about their priorities if they won't even count all the bodies? And so we have people saying that the Holocaust did not happen in the way that they claimed it happened, that the death toll is far, far lower, when you have the reverse situation in the Nazi occupation of Afghanistan, in which the death toll of the Afghani people is far, 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 far higher than anything they have ever admitted to you. So we have Andrew, the Daily Stormer, saying that for every U.S. soldier, right, so and so many Afghans got to die. Meanwhile, they don't criticize Russia, they don't criticize China, and there's articles about both China and Russia giving the Taliban money for the amount of U.S. troops that they killed. And so these people in conspiracy theory that are pro-China, that are pro-Russia, are anti-U.S. military. They're anti-veteran. In fact, they're the ones that are anti-white, as their white supremacy puts white people in danger. People like my mother, who lives in a major city, who's elderly, who now has to carry mace, who lives in an area where old white women like her are knocked unconscious all the time by black men. And even though I have stood up against racism towards black men and I've tried to wake them up, you cannot see them in any capacity supporting my work. One person asked me what I thought about his favorite white prepper channels that are pointing the finger at ethnic minorities, saying, America, be afraid, stay inside, full spectrum survival, the channel. America, be afraid, stay inside, be armed, something's going to go down. And they think that's normal. Would they accept that? Would they be okay with that if they're going to be playing up the black boogeymen? Well, I'll tell you what, the alternative media was playing up the black boogeyman psychosis during Obama's time. The prepper websites that I looked at was making up fake news about Obama. You understand I don't like Obama? You understand Obama's a part of the world government? You understand Obama killed a lot of Iraqis and Afghanis and expanded Bush's drone program? You understand Obama put us in debt? Obama was a piece of garbage, but Obama did not create a large anti-white black militant movement. As Alex Jones in his Fall of the Republic DVD about Obama made it seem like we were going to face. He had clips of blacks acting in a militant sense, and he was acting like black militias were going to be on the rise that would threaten the lives of white people. Where are those black individuals aware of the things that Alex Jones was doing back in the day? What are they doing in modern prepper circles? Putting up with these white men putting down people from around the world, acting like they're about to commit terrorism. Whatever terrorism we're about to experience, ladies and gentlemen, is likely to be manufactured just like 9/11, just like some say what happened in Israel. With that, I will now bring this to a close, and we will be back with our discussion on how to mediate the effects of the solar cycles.